The massive alien ship floated in space like a crystal cathedral. Its walls sparkled with thousands of lights, each one pulsing in perfect rhythm. Captain Sarah Chen watched through the view screen of the UES Persistence as they approached the vessel. Her crew was silent behind her, all of them knowing this moment would change everything for humanity. "They're beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. He was right. The ship looked nothing like the dark, angular vessels humans built. This one seemed alive, organic, like it had grown rather than been constructed. Dr. HFY materialized on their bridge in a shower of blue light. The alien was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow waves, and when it spoke, the sound came from everywhere at once. "Greetings, humans of Earth," HFY said, its voice like wind chimes. "I am the xenobiologist assigned to evaluate your species for membership in the Galactic Confederation. We welcome you to the community of peaceful worlds." Sarah stepped forward and smiled. "Thank you, Dr. HFY. We're honored to meet you and learn about your confederation." The crystal being studied her with what she assumed were eyes, though they looked more like glowing points of light scattered across its face. "Your species shows great promise. Your first contact protocols were exceptionally peaceful. Most species we encounter are more aggressive in their initial communications. We believe in diplomacy first," Sarah replied. It was true, mostly. Humanity had learned the hard way that shooting first and asking questions later usually ended badly for everyone involved. HFY led them through the alien ship. The corridors were wide and curved with soft lighting that seemed to come from the walls themselves. They passed other aliens. Some looked like walking plants with multiple arms. Others resembled large, furry creatures with big eyes and gentle expressions. All of them moved slowly, deliberately, with an almost meditative calm. "The Confederation has maintained peace for over 3,000 years," HFY explained as they walked. "We have 47 member species, all committed to nonviolence and mutual cooperation. War is unknown among us." Sarah nodded, but something nagged at her. "That's impressive. How do you handle conflicts between species?" "We discuss, we mediate, we find solutions that benefit all parties." HFY's light patterns seemed pleased. "Violence is never necessary when beings are willing to communicate with open hearts." They entered a vast chamber filled with holographic displays showing different worlds. Lush forests, crystal cities, floating gardens in space. Every image showed peace and prosperity. Sarah noticed her crew spreading out, unconsciously positioning themselves to cover all the exits. Old habits from their military training. "Earth appears to be a garden world," HFY continued, gesturing to a display of their home planet. "Your species clearly evolved in a peaceful environment. Look at these beautiful forests, these calm oceans. No wonder you developed such gentle natures." Sarah almost laughed. If only the alien knew what lurked in those beautiful forests. The sharks in those calm oceans. The million years of human ancestors who had survived by being better hunters than everything else that wanted to eat them. "We do love our planet," she said instead. An alarm chimed softly, and another alien approached. This one looked like a combination of bird and insect, with delicate wings and feathers that shimmered in rainbow colors. "Dr. HFY," the creature sang in a voice like music. "The Council wishes to review the human assessment." "Of course." HFY turned to Sarah. "Would you and your crew like to observe? It's quite routine." They were led to an amphitheater where dozens of aliens sat in curved rows. Sarah counted at least 20 different species, all watching as HFY projected images of humans and Earth onto a large screen. "The species calls itself Homo sapiens," HFY began. "They appear to be omnivorous but primarily herbivorous, based on their agricultural development and peaceful first contact. Their eyes are forward-facing, which usually indicates a cooperative species that developed tool use for construction rather than hunting." Sarah felt Lieutenant Torres tense beside her. She put a gentle hand on his arm. The aliens had completely misunderstood what forward-facing eyes meant. "Their planet shows no signs of recent warfare," HFY continued. Their cities are built for comfort and beauty rather than defense. They appear to have no natural predators, which explains their trusting nature. Behind her, she heard Chief Engineer Park make a small, choking sound. He was probably thinking about bears, wolves, sharks, snakes, spiders, and the 1,000 other things that had spent millions of years trying to eat their ancestors. Their literature and entertainment focus on cooperation, love, and peaceful resolution of conflicts, SciFi said, showing clips from human movies and books. Sarah realized they had only been given access to humanity's diplomatic cultural exports. They hadn't seen their war movies, their crime dramas, their sports, where humans regularly injured each other for entertainment. They hadn't read their military history or learned about humanity's talent for turning anything into a weapon. Based on all evidence, SciFi concluded, I recommend classifying humans as Class C herbivorous pacifists. They should be excellent candidates for agricultural colony management and cultural exchange programs. The Council voted unanimously to accept humanity into the Confederation. Sarah accepted their congratulations and signed the preliminary agreements, all while her mind raced. The aliens thought humans were harmless plant eaters. They were offering them control of agricultural worlds that fed the entire Confederation. They were inviting Earth's apex predators to manage their food supply. Over the following weeks, Sarah and her crew were given tours of Confederation worlds. They visited crystal cities where the inhabitants had never seen violence. They walked through forests where every animal was gentle and tame. They met species that had evolved from creatures that ate plants or filtered nutrients from water, or absorbed energy from their suns. None of them had ever been hunters. None of them had ever been prey. They had all evolved in environments so peaceful that they had never learned to fight, never learned to fear, never learned to kill. Captain, Torres said one evening as they sat in their quarters aboard the Confederation ship, they have no idea what we are, do they? No, Sarah replied, watching through the window as peaceful alien ships drifted past. They see us as kindred spirits, fellow gardeners. What do we do? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. These aliens were good people. They had built something beautiful, a galaxy-wide civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect. They welcomed strangers with open arms and trusted them completely. They had also survived for 3,000 years without meeting anything that wanted to hurt them. We do what we promised, she said finally. We learn about their culture. We share our knowledge. We help them with their agricultural projects. And if something threatens them, Sarah smiled, and for just a moment something ancient and dangerous flickered in her eyes. Then they'll learn why evolution made us the way we are. She looked out at the peaceful ships and sleeping worlds of the Confederation. They were beautiful, innocent, and completely defenseless. And now they were under the protection of creatures who had spent millions of years learning how to hunt. The aliens thought they had found fellow gardeners. They had actually invited wolves to guard their sheep. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Confederation, and Captain Sarah Chen was beginning to understand just how peaceful these aliens really were. She stood in the agricultural center of Kepler Station, watching Dr. SciFi tend to a garden of plants that seemed to sing when the wind touched them. The harvest festivals on 7 worlds begin next week, SciFi said, its crystal body chiming softly as it moved between the plants. Your agricultural suggestions have increased yields by 30%. The Council is very pleased with human integration. Sarah nodded, but her attention was elsewhere. Lieutenant Torres was across the garden, apparently admiring some blue flowers. To the aliens, he looked like a peaceful tourist. Sarah saw the way his eyes constantly moved, tracking every entrance and exit, counting the aliens present, noting their positions. 3 months of living among prey animals hadn't changed their instincts. The alert came without warning. Every screen in the station suddenly displayed the same image, a dark, twisted ship that looked like it had been carved from black metal and bone. The peaceful background music stopped. Across the garden, aliens began making distressed sounds, chirps, whistles, and harmonics that Sarah's translator couldn't interpret, but that made her skin crawl. Emergency council session, announced a voice that sounded like it was trying not to panic. All senior personnel to Assembly Hall 7 immediately. The Assembly Hall was chaos. 47 species of aliens filled the curved seating, and they were all talking at once. Some were crying, or at least making sounds Sarah assumed were crying. Others sat in stunned silence. A few were praying to whatever gods they believed in. "Order. Please, order!" called the council speaker, a tall being that looked like a walking tree with silver bark. "Dr. Veshitar will present the findings." A small, round alien with multiple eyes floated to the center of the hall. When it spoke, its voice shook with fear. "Long-range sensors have detected a fleet of unknown vessels entering Confederation space," Veshitar began. "Based on their energy signatures and movement patterns, we believe them to be the species known as the Devourers." The hall erupted in panic. Sarah had never heard so many different species all expressing terror at the same time. It sounded like a zoo during a fire. "The Devourers haven't been seen for over a century," Veshitar continued. "But the old records are clear. They are a nomadic species that consumes entire star systems. They strip mine planets, harvest all organic matter, and leave nothing but dead rock behind. 17 star systems have fallen to them." "How long until they reach us?" asked someone from the crowd. 6 standard days. The panic got worse. Some aliens fainted. Others began frantically making calls to their home worlds. Sarah watched it all with growing fascination. These people had no idea how to handle a real threat. "What are our defensive capabilities?" she asked loudly. The hall went quiet. All eyes turned to her. "Defensive capabilities?" repeated the council speaker. "Captain Chen, we are a peaceful confederation. We have no military. You must have some kind of security forces. Police, peacekeepers, something." "Yes, of course. We have peacekeeping vessels equipped with non-lethal restraint systems. They're designed to stop conflicts through negotiation, and if necessary, temporary incapacitation." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Non-lethal weapons, against an enemy that strips planets clean. We have never needed anything else," the speaker said quietly. Dr. Zephi approached Sarah after the session. The crystal being's lights were dimmer than usual, pulsing with what she was learning to recognize as anxiety. "Captain Chen, I need to ask you something," Zephi said. "During the emergency session, you remained remarkably calm. Your crew showed no signs of panic. This is unusual. We've dealt with crises before." "Yes, but this was different. When the image of the Devourer ship appeared, I observed your reaction carefully. Your pupils dilated, your breathing changed, your muscle tension increased. But these were not fear responses." Sarah looked at the alien carefully. "What do you think they were?" "I believe you were excited, as if you had seen something interesting rather than something terrifying." Before Sarah could answer, Lieutenant Torres approached. He had been studying the Confederation's technical databases for weeks. "Captain, I've reviewed their defensive systems. It's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" "Their idea of a heavy weapon is a gravity net that can slow down a ship. Their most powerful vessels have the firepower equivalent to a 21st century police cruiser. They have never built anything designed to actually destroy another ship." Dr. Zephi's lights flickered with confusion. Why would anyone build something designed to destroy? "The purpose of technology is to preserve and protect life." "Sometimes," Sarah said quietly, "the only way to protect life is to destroy the things that threaten it." Over the next day, Sarah and her crew volunteered to help with defense planning. They attended strategy meetings where the Confederation's best minds tried to figure out how to negotiate with an enemy that had never communicated with any of its victims. "Perhaps if we offer them agricultural products," suggested one alien, "they might not need to consume our worlds if we provide what they need willingly." "We could evacuate all inhabited planets and let them take what they want," said another. "Surely they would leave us alone if we didn't interfere." Sarah listened to it all with growing amazement. These people were trying to solve a military problem with agricultural solutions and retreat strategies. It was like watching sheep plan a defense against wolves. "May I make a suggestion?" she finally asked. The room turned to her. "I'd like to review your battle plans." Battle plans. The alien general, if you could call something with no weapons and no combat experience a general, looked confused. "We don't have battle plans. We have evacuation procedures and diplomatic protocols." "Right. Well, perhaps my crew could help you develop some defensive strategies." They agreed, mostly because they were desperate. Sarah spent the rest of the day reviewing Confederation fleet positions, weapon capabilities, and tactical doctrines. What she found would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. The Confederation had spread their forces evenly across their territory, which meant they couldn't concentrate enough firepower anywhere to matter. Their ships were designed for comfort and efficiency, with no armor and no redundant systems. Their communication networks were completely open with no encryption or security protocols. Dr. HFY, Sarah said that evening, I need to ask you about Earth's classification. Of course, you're Class C herbivorous pacifists. Why? When you studied our planet, what did you think about our history? Your history? HFY's lights brightened with interest. We focused primarily on your recent development, your art and culture, your peaceful transition to a unified world government. Why? Did you research our older history? Before we had global government? Some. Your species seems to have had occasional conflicts, but nothing unusual. Most species go through difficult periods before achieving enlightenment. Sarah pulled up Earth's historical database on her tablet. Dr. HFY, in the last 1,000 years, humans have fought approximately 14,000 wars. The aliens' lights went completely still. That can't be correct. In our most recent global conflict, we killed over 70 million of our own species in 6 years. Impossible. We have weapons that can destroy entire cities. We've had them for over 400 years. We've used them. Dr. HFY stared at the data scrolling across Sarah's screen. Population statistics, casualty figures, weapons specifications, battle maps showing fronts that stretched across continents, but your first contact was so peaceful. Your cultural exports show cooperation and love. Because we chose to show you those things, Sarah said gently. Dr. HFY, has it occurred to you that a species might be capable of both peace and war? That we might choose diplomacy not because we don't know how to fight, but because we know exactly how terrible fighting can be? The crystal being's lights began pulsing rapidly, almost frantically. You're saying that humans are warriors? I'm saying that when those devourer ships arrive in 5 days, you're going to see what 47 peaceful species look like when they're protected by one that isn't. Dr. HFY hadn't slept in 2 days. The crystal being sat in its research chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing data about Earth and its people. Every piece of information made the picture clearer and more terrifying. Humans weren't gardeners. They were something else entirely. The door chimed and Captain Sarah Chen entered. She moved differently now that the crisis had begun. Her steps were quieter, more deliberate. Her eyes swept the room automatically before focusing on HFY. It was the way a predator moved through unfamiliar territory. You wanted to see me, Doctor? I've been researching your species more thoroughly, HFY said, its lights pulsing with nervous energy. I need to understand what we've brought into the Confederation. Sarah sat down, her posture relaxed but somehow still alert. What have you found? Your planet Earth. 65 million years ago, an asteroid impact killed most life on your world. The creatures that survived were small, fast, and adaptive. They lived by avoiding larger predators and finding food in a devastated landscape. The mammals, our ancestors. Yes. But here's what disturbs me. Instead of evolving toward peace and cooperation like every other sapient species, your ancestors became better predators. They developed larger brains to track prey, better coordination to hunt in groups, and tool use to kill things more efficiently. Sarah nodded. That's accurate. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals, filter feeders, or peaceful omnivores. You're the only apex predators to achieve sapience. HFY activated another holographic display. It showed brain scans comparing humans to other Confederation species. Your brains are structured differently. The areas that control spatial awareness, pattern recognition, and rapid decision-making are overdeveloped compared to ours. These are hunting adaptations. We prefer to think of them as survival adaptations. Your eyes, HFY continued, are positioned for binocular vision with depth perception, perfect for tracking moving targets. Every peaceful species has eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for threats. You have the eyes of a hunter. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Doctor, are you afraid of us? Yes, HFY admitted, but also fascinated. May I ask you something? Of course. When you first saw our ship 3 months ago, what was your initial assessment? Sarah considered the question. Honestly, I noted that your hull appeared to have no armor plating, your weapon ports were minimal, and your ship positioning suggested you had no tactical awareness. My crew automatically began cataloging potential boarding routes and defensive weak points. You analyzed us as a potential threat to neutralize. We analyze everything as a potential threat. It's automatic. HFY's lights dimmed. I've been reviewing the cultural exchange reports. When you visited our agricultural worlds, you asked about crop yields, population centers, and transportation networks. We thought you were interested in farming techniques. We were. But we were also unconsciously gathering intelligence about your food production capabilities, population density, and infrastructure vulnerabilities. You've been mapping our weaknesses. Not intentionally, Sarah said quickly. It's just how we think. When a human looks at anything, a landscape, a building, another person, part of our brain automatically assesses it. How dangerous is it? How useful could it be? How would we attack it if we had to? How would we defend it if we needed to? Even when looking at friends, especially when looking at friends, we need to know how to protect the things we care about. HFY activated another display showing human sports and entertainment. Your recreational activities involve simulated combat, competitive physical confrontation, and strategic games based on warfare. You watch stories about violence for entertainment. Some of our entertainment, yes. Your children play games where they pretend to hunt and fight. It's how they learn. Learn what? How to survive. The door chimed again, and Lieutenant Torres entered with Chief Engineer Park. Both humans immediately noticed the positions of everyone in the room, the lighting, the exit routes. It was automatic, unconscious. Captain, Torres said, the Confederation War Council wants to review our defensive suggestions. War Council, HFY repeated. 3 days ago, we didn't even have that term in our vocabulary. The War Council meeting was held in the same assembly hall where the Devourer threat had first been announced. But now the peaceful curved chamber felt different. Human tactical displays covered the walls, showing fleet positions, weapon ranges, and something the aliens had never seen before, casualty projections. Captain Chen stood at the center of the hall, explaining her defensive strategy to a room full of beings who had never heard such concepts. The key is to make them commit their forces to a target that appears valuable, but is actually a trap, she said, highlighting a section of space on the main display. We evacuate the civilian population from the Kepler system and make it look like we're defending it desperately. You want to abandon an entire star system? Asked the council speaker. Temporarily. We rig the industrial platforms to explode when the Devourers try to harvest them. The energy release should destroy a significant portion of their fleet. That's deliberately causing destruction. Yes, but the infrastructure damage will take decades to repair, better than losing the entire Confederation. An alien general, HFY had learned, that they were now calling their evacuation coordinators. Generals, Ian raised a tentacle. Captain Chen, your casualty projections show that we could lose up to 12% of our fleet. That's optimistic, Sarah replied. Without proper weapons or armor, you'll probably lose more. How can you discuss this so calmly? Those are living beings. Sarah looked around the room at dozens of aliens who were staring at her in horror. Because the alternative is 100% casualties. Dr. HFY, would you please show them what happened to the other systems the Devourers attacked? HFY reluctantly activated the display. Images appeared of dead worlds. Planets stripped of their atmospheres, their surfaces scarred by massive mining operations. Their populations vanished without a trace. 17 star systems, Sarah said quietly. Trillions of beings. The Devourers left nothing alive. Nothing at all. The room was silent. I understand that you find our methods disturbing, Sarah continued. But this is what my species learned during millions of years of evolution. Sometimes the only way to protect life is to be willing to take it. Sometimes the only way to save your family is to kill the things that want to eat them. Dr. HFY stood up, its lights pulsing with a complex pattern that humans were learning to recognize as deep thought. Captain Chen, I need to ask you something that the Council has been discussing privately. Yes? If the Confederation had refused to accept humanity as members, if we had been hostile to you during first contact, what would you have done? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The entire room waited for her answer. We would have studied you until we understood your weaknesses. We would have developed strategies to neutralize your advantages. We would have prepared for the possibility that we might need to defend ourselves. Even though we showed no aggressive intentions, especially because you showed no aggressive intentions. In our experience, the most dangerous enemies are the ones who smile while they plan your destruction. So you were evaluating us as potential threats from the very beginning. Yes. And now we're evaluating the Devourers the same way. The difference is you're under our protection. Zephai's lights brightened suddenly. Under your protection. Not allied with you, not cooperating with you. Under your protection. Yes. Like prey animals under the protection of a predator. Sarah met the alien's gaze steadily. Like family under the protection of someone who knows how to fight. The council voted to implement Sarah's battle plan. They didn't understand it, they didn't like it. But they were beginning to understand that they had invited something very dangerous to live among them. Something that had decided they were worth protecting. As the meeting broke up, Sci-Fi approached Sarah one last time. Captain, what will happen after this crisis is over? When the Devourers are gone and we return to peace? We'll go back to being your gardener friends, Sarah said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We'll tend your crops and share your festivals and help you maintain your beautiful, peaceful civilization. And you'll continue evaluating us for weaknesses. Of course, that's what predators do. Even predators who choose to protect rather than hunt. Especially those predators, Doctor. The wolves that guard the sheep need to be the most dangerous wolves of all. The first battle lasted 14 minutes. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Confederate flagship as the peaceful aliens' carefully planned defense crumbled exactly as she had predicted. The Devourer ships moved through space like hungry sharks, their dark hulls absorbing weapon fire that would have disabled human vessels but barely scratched their armored surfaces. Confederation Fleet 7 has been destroyed, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. His voice was steady, professional. Fleet 12 is retreating. Fleet 4 has lost 70% of its ships. Around them, the alien crew of the flagship made sounds of distress. Dr. Zephai stood beside Sarah's command chair, its crystal body flickering with lights that had no pattern, no rhythm, pure panic made visible. This is impossible, whispered Admiral Kethmore, the Confederation's senior military commander, the tall plant-like being swayed as if in a strong wind. Our simulations showed we could hold them for at least 6 hours. Your simulations assumed they would follow rules, Sarah said, never taking her eyes off the tactical display. They assumed the Devourers would fight like you do, cautiously trying to minimize casualties, looking for peaceful solutions. A new alarm sounded. More red dots appeared on the screen. Devourer reinforcements jumping in, Torres announced. 27 additional vessels. The Confederate fleet had started with 200 ships. In 14 minutes, they were down to 83. The Devourers hadn't lost a single vessel. Admiral Kethmore turned to Sarah with something like desperation in its large, gentle eyes. Captain Chen, the Council has voted. We're transferring fleet command to you. Sarah stood up slowly. Every alien on the bridge watched her, waiting for the miracle that would save their civilization. She looked at the tactical display one more time, then turned to face them. I accept command, but understand this, I don't fight the way you do. I don't try to minimize casualties or find peaceful solutions. I fight to win, whatever the cost. We understand, Kethmore said quietly. Do you? Because in 30 minutes I'm going to order our ships to ram Devourer vessels. I'm going to use civilian transports as decoys. I'm going to sacrifice entire fleets to create tactical advantages. The bridge was silent. And you're going to watch your people die while I do it. Sarah turned to Torres. Signal all fleet commanders. New tactical designation. This is now a hunter-killer operation. The change was immediate. Human voices began cutting through the Confederate communication channels, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences that carried no emotion, only information. Target priorities, attack vectors, casualty assessments, the language of predators coordinating a hunt. All ships, this is Captain Chen. Forget everything you've learned about combat. Forget rules of engagement. Forget honor. The Devourers are not fellow beings to be reasoned with. They are a disease to be eliminated. On the tactical display, the remaining Confederate ships began moving in patterns that had never been used in their 3,000 years of peace. They grouped into hunting packs, abandoned defensive positions, and started targeting the Devourers' flanks instead of meeting them head-on. Confederate Destroyer Squadron 5, Sarah's voice crackled over the communications. You see that group of Devourer ships moving toward the Helios colony? Yes, Captain. Let them take it. Gasps echoed around the bridge. Admiral Kethmore stepped forward. Captain, there are 12 million beings on Helios. I know. Lieutenant Torres, how long to evacuate Helios? 18 hours minimum. The Devourers will be there in 4 hours. Captain, Dr. Zephai said, its lights pulsing frantically. You can't abandon an entire world. Sarah turned to the crystal being. Doctor, what do Devourers do when they find a heavily populated planet? They harvest everything. How long does that take? According to our records, between 6 and 10 hours for a world that size. And while they're busy harvesting Helios, where will their fleet be? Understanding dawned in Zephai's lights. Stationary, vulnerable. Exactly. Sarah turned back to the tactical display. We're going to let them feast, and while they're distracted, we're going to kill them all. The next 6 hours were unlike anything the Confederation had ever experienced. Sarah coordinated the battle from 17 different locations simultaneously, moving the flagship constantly to avoid becoming a target. Human pilots flew Confederate ships in ways that would have been impossible for aliens, pulling maneuvers that generated forces that would have knocked most species unconscious. Captain, called Chief Engineer Park from his station, our pilots are reporting that Confederate crew members are passing out during combat maneuvers. Rotate them out. Humans only for attack runs. Ma'am, we only have 47 human pilots. The Confederation has over 3,000 ships. Then, we'll have to make do with 47 ships that can actually fight. Dr. Zephai watched in fascination and horror as the humans transformed the remaining Confederate fleet. Ships that had been designed for peaceful exploration were turned into weapons. Cargo holds were packed with explosives. Science vessels became suicide bombers. Transport ships became decoys. Captain Chen, the doctor said during a brief lull in the battle, how are you able to continue functioning? My species would have collapsed from exhaustion hours ago. Sarah looked at the alien with eyes that had developed dark circles but remained alert. We evolved to persistence hunt, Doctor. Our ancestors would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Compared to that, this is just an afternoon jog. The communications officer, an alien with multiple arms and delicate musical speech, looked up from its station. Captain, I'm receiving distress signals from 14 different worlds. The Devourers are attacking everywhere at once. Let them, Sarah said calmly. Lieutenant Torres, what's the status on the Helios operation? The Devourers have been harvesting for 4 hours. Their entire fleet is committed to the operation. Perfect. Signal Attack Group Alpha. Begin the Helios run. What followed would become known in Confederate history as the Helios Massacre, though it was the Devourers who were massacred. While their entire fleet was spread out across the planet's surface, Sarah's hunter-killer pack struck from 3 directions at once. The Devourers had expected the Confederation to try to save Helios. They had prepared for a traditional battle, where enemies met face-to-face and fought until one side retreated. They weren't prepared for enemies who would sacrifice a world to create a trap. Devourer losses are at 60%, Torres reported. They're trying to regroup. Don't let them. All ships, Pursuit Pattern 7. Run down any ship that tries to escape. Dr. Zephai watched the tactical display as human-commanded ships chased fleeing Devourers across 3 star systems. The aliens moved like pack hunters, coordinating without conscious thought, cutting off escape routes and driving their prey into killing zones. Captain, the doctor said quietly, your people aren't just fighting them, you're hunting them. Sarah smiled for the first time in hours. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Now you're beginning to understand what we are. The battle for Helios lasted 72 hours. When it was over, the Devourer fleet had been reduced from 230 ships to 19. The Confederation had lost 48 worlds and over 1 trillion beings, but they had learned something important. Predators could choose what to hunt. Admiral Kethmore, Sarah said as she relinquished command back to the Confederate officer. Your people need to understand something. This isn't over? What do you mean? 19 Devourer ships escaped. They'll be back, probably with reinforcements. Then we'll fight them again. Sarah shook her head. No. Fighting them again means more worlds lost, more people dead. There's only one way to handle a threat like this. Which is? We follow them home. We find where they come from, and we make sure they never threaten anyone again. Dr. Zephai's lights flickered with understanding and fear. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about survival. Doctor, your people spent 3,000 years building something beautiful. The Devourers would destroy all of it without a second thought. Sometimes the only way to protect life is to eliminate the things that exist only to destroy it. The crystal being was quiet for a long moment. And this is what humans call justice? No, Sarah said softly. This is what humans call Tuesday. She looked out at the stars, where somewhere in the darkness 19 Devourer ships were carrying news of this defeat back to their people. Tomorrow we start hunting. The final hunt lasted 3 weeks. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Persistence as it emerged from hyperspace into the Devourer home system. Around her, a mixed fleet of human and Confederate ships spread out in perfect formation, predators moving through their prey's territory with deadly confidence. Multiple contacts, Lieutenant Torres reported. I count over 400 Devourer vessels in system. Dr. Zephy's crystal body trembled beside Sarah's command chair. The alien had insisted on joining this final mission, claiming it needed to witness what humans truly were. 400 ships, the doctor whispered. Captain, perhaps we should reconsider. We could return to Confederate space and prepare better defenses. Sarah smiled, the expression that had become familiar to aliens over the past month. The smile of a predator that had found its prey. Doctor, what do you think we've been doing for 3 weeks? On the main screen, the tactical display showed something that no Confederate had ever seen before. A human fleet preparing not just to fight, but to completely eliminate an enemy. Every ship position was calculated not for defense or territorial control, but for maximum killing efficiency. Admiral Keith Moore, Sarah said into her communicator, begin Phase 1. What followed wasn't a battle in any sense that the Confederation understood. It was an extermination. The Devourers had expected the humans to attack their fleet directly. Instead, Sarah's forces targeted the system's infrastructure. Power stations, communication relays, orbital platforms, everything that kept their civilization functioning. Why aren't we attacking their ships? Asked Commander Yethra, a 4-armed alien who had become Sarah's liaison with the Confederate forces. Because ships can run away, Sarah replied, watching as human torpedoes struck a massive orbital factory. We're not just here to defeat them. We're here to make sure they can never threaten anyone again. The Devourer fleet tried to regroup, tried to coordinate a defense, but their communications were down. Their command structure was in chaos, and they were facing an enemy that thought 3 moves ahead. Phase 2, Sarah announced. The human ships began something that horrified their alien allies: psychological warfare. Instead of destroying Devourer vessels quickly, they disabled them and left them drifting. They let some ships escape, only to hunt them down in sight of others. They turned the Devourer's own aggressive nature against them, making them panic and fight each other. Captain, Dr. Zephy said, its lights pulsing with distress. This is cruelty. No, Sarah replied calmly. This is education. We're teaching them that hunting peaceful species has consequences. By the end of the first day, the Devourer fleet was scattered and demoralized. By the end of the second day, they were surrendering in groups, begging for mercy in languages that human computers struggled to translate. By the end of the third day, they were extinct. All Devourer vessels destroyed or surrendered, Torres reported. The system is secure. Sarah looked around the bridge at her mixed crew of humans and aliens. The aliens stared at her with expressions she was learning to recognize, fear mixed with awe and a growing understanding of what they had allied themselves with. Dr. Zephy, she said quietly. What do you see when you look at us now? The crystal being was quiet for a long time before answering. I see the galaxy's apex predators. I see a species that could have consumed everything but chose to protect instead. And that doesn't terrify you? It should, but it doesn't. Zephy's lights shifted to a pattern Sarah had never seen before, complex, beautiful, somehow peaceful. Because you're our apex predators now. The journey back to Confederate space took 2 weeks. During that time, Sarah watched as the relationship between humans and aliens changed fundamentally. The respectful cooperation was gone, replaced by something deeper and more complex. The aliens no longer tried to understand human tactical decisions. They simply implemented them. They stopped questioning human methods and started asking how they could help. Most importantly, they stopped seeing humans as fellow gardeners and started seeing them as guardians. Captain, Commander Yethra said one day as they traveled through hyperspace, I've been analyzing the battle reports from our recent campaign. What did you find? In 3 weeks, 47 human pilots and tacticians coordinated the actions of over 2,000 Confederate personnel. You turned our entire civilization into an extension of human military doctrine. Is that a problem? No, it's remarkable. We've become more effective than we ever imagined possible. Sarah nodded. It was true. The Confederate forces under human leadership had performed feats that their own military analysts had considered impossible. But there was a cost. Commander, do you understand what your people have given up? What do you mean? Independence. The ability to make your own strategic decisions. 3 weeks ago, you were a free confederation of equals. Now you're a client state under human protection. Jethro was quiet for a moment. Captain, 3 weeks ago, we were a free confederation that was about to be wiped out by the Devourers. I think we made a good trade. The council meeting to discuss humanity's permanent status in the Confederation was held in the same assembly hall where the crisis had begun. But everything had changed. The curved, peaceful chamber now had human tactical displays built into the walls. Confederate security forces carried weapons designed by human engineers. The council members themselves moved differently, less like a gathering of equals, more like advisors reporting to their protectors. The question before us, announced the council speaker, is whether to offer humanity a permanent leadership role in Confederate defense. Dr. HFY stood to address the assembly. Over the past month, the crystal being had become something unexpected, humanity's advocate among the aliens. Honored Council, HFY began. I have spent considerable time studying human nature and behavior. I believe I now understand what we are dealing with. The hall was completely silent. Humans are apex predators who achieved sapience without losing their hunting instincts. This makes them fundamentally different from every other known intelligent species, but it also makes them uniquely qualified to protect us. Protect us from what? Asked a delegate. The Devourers are gone. The Devourers were just one threat, HFY replied. The galaxy is vast, and we have been fortunate to avoid dangers for 3,000 years. That fortune will not last forever. Sarah stood to address the council. Dr. HFY is correct. The Devourers weren't unique. They were just the first hostile species you encountered. Our analysis of galactic history shows at least 12 other aggressive civilizations that could pose similar threats. What are you proposing? Asked the speaker. A new arrangement. Humanity becomes the Confederation's military arm. We handle all external threats, maintain galactic security, and develop defensive strategies. In return, we become full partners in Confederate governance. To partners? The speaker's trunk-like body swayed nervously. Or rulers? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. That depends on you. We could be partners who protect you while respecting your autonomy. Or we could be rulers who protect you whether you want it or not. The choice is yours. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted permanent authority over Confederate military affairs and given equal representation in all major governmental decisions. After the meeting, Sarah and Dr. HFY walked through the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Doctor, I need to ask you something, Sarah said. Are you afraid of what we might become? Should I be? We're predators, Doctor. We've evolved to hunt, to dominate, to control territory. Now you've given us authority over an entire galactic civilization. HFY's lights pulsed thoughtfully. Captain, may I tell you what I've learned about humans during this crisis? Of course. You had the opportunity to conquer us from the very beginning. You were stronger, smarter, better equipped for conflict. You could have taken everything we had. But we didn't. Exactly. And that's when I realized something important about apex predators, which is, the most dangerous ones aren't the ones who hunt for food or territory. The most dangerous ones are the ones who hunt to protect their pack. Sarah smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't the predator's smile that had terrified so many aliens. It was something warmer, more human. So you're not afraid of us? Oh, I'm terrified of you, HFY said, its lights brightening with what Sarah had learned was alien laughter. But I'm not afraid of you. There's a difference. What difference? I'm terrified of what you could do to our enemies, but I'm not afraid of what you'll do to us. Sarah looked out at the peaceful ships and sleeping worlds of the Confederation. 3 months ago, she had thought they were inviting wolves to guard sheep. She had been wrong. They had invited wolves into the pack. Doctor, she said quietly, welcome to the Apex.